日4コインになったよ。だとしたらお前はミスをした。プレイには研修を見てみよう。回復くらいのぞ。そいつが欲しければ、その時はお前の瞬殺時を踏んだから、懸賞金11億1100万でどうしよう。赤の2コインも同じか。お前はそれを考えろ。要求を飲むのよ。いいか。その日には評価がある。
Hey there, pirates! Welcome aboard the Anime No Mi channel. Zoro was never one to get too attached to the past. What really mattered was the next fight, the next mountain to cut, the next swordsman to defeat. But after everything that happened in Wano, after facing Kaido, King, and even talking to a sword that seemed alive, it became impossible to ignore certain loose ends. And that's where his father's story comes in. Because yes, we already knew his name was Arashi, that he was a Shimotsuki, and that he came from the Shimotsuki village in East Blue. But what we never really thought about was why this guy just vanished, and how he lost his life. And that's when maybe Zoro himself starts to wonder, was he just another warrior on the list of the defeated, or is there more to it? In chapter 11:09, there's a quick line from Hyogoro when he mentions, the winds of the past generation are blowing again, and it's easy to overlook, but if you stop and think, wind, Arashi, his name literally means storm. It might just be a small detail, but maybe it's a clue. Then comes chapter 11:52, where Gaban talks to Zoro and drops a heavy comment. You haven't cut your own fate yet, swordsman. This really messes with Zoro's head. He pretends like he didn't hear it, but he's deep in thought, and anyone who knows Zoro knows he doesn't think about light stuff. The truth is, there's something strange about the way Arashi disappeared. They say he went to face pirates and never came back. Okay, fine. A lot of people die that way. But why has no one ever found his body? Why was his sword, which supposedly came from the same blacksmith who made the Wado Ichimonji, never seen again? Maybe it's hidden. Maybe someone took it out of fear. Maybe it ended up back in Wano. And here's where it gets even crazier. In Elbaf, in chapter 11:53, when they show the Yggdrasil underworld, there's a moment where Loki stares at a forgotten, half-hidden tomb and says, not all the swords sleeping here belong to giants. What kind of tomb holds swords of human warriors? And why would there be a sword like that there? And what if, just what if, one of the swords sleeping there is Arashi's? Maybe, and I'm just speculating here, Arashi went to face a group of pirates on the orders of the world government. Not because he was a marine or anything like that, but because he discovered something he shouldn't have. Maybe it has something to do with the Shimotsuki family symbol? Maybe he protected someone. Maybe he left not because he wanted to fight, but because he knew that if he stayed, danger would come for Zoro and Terra. And in all of that, he fell, but his sword was taken by someone. Maybe even one of the revolutionaries. Who knows? Maybe Dragon saw it happen. Maybe it was hidden in Elbaf by old allies. Zoro, without even knowing it, has been feeling that sword calling to him. In chapter 11:47, when he's training alongside Sanji and Luffy near the treasure tree, he hears a buzzing in his left ear. He looks up and sees a giant black bird flying overhead. You can't tell what it is, but the sound it makes is K-Zen, almost like it's saying Blade Wind. Coincidence? Maybe not. It could be the call of a legacy he doesn't even know he carries yet, but time passes, Zoro grows, and he ends up exactly where it all began. In Wano, not only does he face the greatest battles of his life, but he also does something no one else has done. He awakens Conqueror's Haki. And that's huge because up until then, the only confirmed Shimotsuki who had that power was Ryuma. And now, Zoro. Maybe Arashi was on the same path, but didn't have time to complete the awakening. Maybe that's why his sword is still out there somewhere, waiting for the right heir. In chapter 1033, when Zoro faces King and Enma starts draining his Haki, it's like the sword itself is testing whether he's worthy of carrying the will it represents. When he passes that test, he says, now I understand what the sword wants from me. And there, for the first time, he smiles respectfully at a blade. That had never happened before. Not with the Sendai Kitetsu, not with the Shusui, only with the Wado Ichimonji and Enma. Both connected to Wano, both connected to his story. And now that he's in Elbaf, with things heating up and Luffy facing absurd figures like Emu and the God Knights, it makes sense that the past is knocking at the door. And Zoro won't deal with it by sitting at a table and talking. He'll face someone who holds the answer. Maybe Loki, maybe an old warrior who knew Arashi, maybe even a clone revived by Vegapunk with memories of the past. But one thing seems clear. Zoro's left eye, the one we always thought was just a stylish detail or a regular scar, might be waiting for the right sword to open. His father's sword, the sword that will complete Zoro's final style. Not as a new attack, but as the closing of a cycle. He doesn't want to be the new Ryuma, he wants to be the first Roronoa Zoro. But for that, he needs to accept where he came from. He needs to cut his fate. He needs to wield the sword that represents what was lost. And maybe when that sword is finally in his hands, his left eye will open for the first time since the time skip. And the world will see that the greatest swordsman swordsman isn't just the one who carries 3 swords, but the one who honors the 4th, the one born from blood, silence, and sacrifice. After everything that happened in Wano, it's safe to say that Zoro has come closer to his roots than ever before. He discovered that he's a direct descendant of the Shimotsuki, a legendary family of swordsmen, and had contact with figures connected to that past. But there was one missing piece, and that piece was always Arashi, his father. It's as if Zoro was ready to accept the name of his lineage. But what prevents him from fully embracing it is that he never understood why his father simply disappeared. This is where Oda might have started to build this mystery a long time ago, even before we noticed. In the SBS of Volume 105, Oda confirmed that Zoro's father was named Arashi and that he lost his life facing pirates. But in practice, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Because if that were the end of it, why confirm this name now, so close to the end? Maybe the point is exactly what you're probably starting to feel as well. To open a door, Arashi may have been more than just a simple swordsman from Shimotsuki village. Perhaps he had a very clear reason for leaving. And that's where the world government comes in. In chapter 1053, when we discover that the Gorosei were desperate to erase the truth about Luffy's fruit and that the world government can manipulate centuries of history, it becomes clear that anyone who discovered something wrong would be hunted down. And here's the connection that makes sense. The dojo in Shimotsuki village wasn't just a training ground, it was a resistance point. If Master Koshiro had a book explaining the Conqueror's haki, and if Kuina grew up with this kind of knowledge, then Arashi probably knew more than he should have. Maybe he discovered something related to the Shimotsuki's legacy. Or worse, maybe he found out about the secret of Ryuma's bloodline and why the world government is afraid of Wano. What if he tried to protect this and ended up being hunted? That could explain why he left and why Tara, Zoro's mother, never said much. She might have known that if Zoro found out everything, he'd go after it and could end up walking the same path as his father. And that's where the moment Zoro might discover the truth about Arashi comes in. It could be an Elbaf, maybe with someone who fought alongside his father. Possibly even an old retired pirate who carries a scar from an old battle. Or it could be with Yamato, who's on a pilgrimage and might come across records of battles that the samurai fought outside of Wano. Either way, Zoro might finally discover that Arashi didn't disappear because he lost in a trivial way. He chose to disappear to protect something bigger, maybe to protect his own son. If this sword is revealed, and it could be a legendary grade blade, or at least a masterpiece made by a Wano blacksmith, it will carry more than just the power of a cut. It will carry a history that Zoro never knew. And then comes the heaviest point, the moment he holds this sword for the first time. Not to fight, but to accept. Because Zoro has always been the guy who thought the only thing he needed was his own strength. But maybe this new sword isn't meant to test his strength. Maybe it's meant to remind him of who he really is. That was today's content. We hope you liked it and want to share your opinion on the subject. Don't forget to share the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and stay amazing.